Hey everybody, welcome back to When Harry Met Board Games. It's been a while, and I figured what better way to reintroduce the channel than with a top 100 list. I have not made a top 100 list in 3 years, and a lot has changed in the last 3 years, in particular in the last 2 years. I've gotten rid of lots of games from my collection. I've had a purge, if you will, in the last 2 years or so. And I've gotten rid of about 300 board games in the last 2 years. That's a lot. These are games I've donated or I've sold on BGG, on eBay, and I have culled my collection and focused on the games that I really, really enjoy. There have been new games that have been played and introduced in the last 2 years, and you will see some of those games, and there's going to be a lot of shuffling around. The games are not going to necessarily be in the same place as they were the last time I did a list like this 3 years ago. And there will be plenty of surprises and perhaps disappointments as well. Without any further ado, we'll get straight into the list with my number 100 board game of all time. My number 100 board game of all time is Sushi Go, the classic pick and pass card drafting game with a Japanese cuisine theme. In particular, I play the Sushi Go Party Edition. I think the regular original Sushi Go, which had a limited set of cards, would not have made it to the top 100. But with the Go Party Deluxe edition, if you will, you have a lot of different options, modular sets of cards that you can mix and match and create different styles of games, meaner games, more generous games, and everything in between. This game, my wife really enjoys it. There are some other friends that I've played this game with and had some success. I haven't yet introduced it to my two children, but I probably will play it with them soon. And it probably will be the first card drafting game that I introduce to them. There will be others that are more advanced in nature as they get older that I also have them play. But Sushi Go Party, it's still in my collection. I have not gotten rid of it for whatever reason, and that's good enough to make it the number 100. My number 99 board game of all time is a new game to the list. It's a new game to me in the last year or so. However, it's not a new game at all, and that is X-Men Alert. And this is a game that came out in 1992. This is a mass market game. I'm not sure if it was Hasbro or some other Parker Brothers, some other mass market company. And it was designed by Richard Borg of Command and Colors fame. And it's an X-Men themed game, as the title indicates. You could tell by my shirt that I'm a big Marvel fan. I love the intellectual property. I love the cartoons, the comics, the movies, and even the board games. And this game, it is an older game. You could tell by its design. It's a roll and move game to an extent. You not necessarily roll and move. You roll to attack different enemies. And if you succeed, you get a certain amount of experience points. And those experience points determine how much your marker can advance along the score track. Lots of elements of chance, but what I do like about this game, besides the fact that it has nice big miniatures for the early 90s, is the fact that they have individual variable player powers among all the X-Men. And there are 18 characters to pick from, so it's a good supply of different characters, and a good amount of villains show up in the game as well that you can fight and combat against. But the different characters have different stats for health points, for how many dice they roll when they attack. Each character has one or two special abilities that differentiate them from one or another. I find that to be so cool. I'm always a big fan of variable player powers. And the thing that gets me to this game is that it kind of puts me back in time from a nostalgic perspective, the early 90s when I first came into the X-Men, Spider-Man, and Marvel universe from a comic book perspective. And it really brings me to that childlike place, that time in my life when my fandom for Marvel first began. So because of that, it makes it to my top 100 at number 99. My number 98 board game of all time is Dice Hospital. And Dice Hospital is a worker placement game with a hospital theme. Each individual player is running their own hospital. They have their player board, which represents the hospital. It starts with a few basic units for the hospital. And as the game expands, you are drafting additional units. You also start the game with just regular nurses, but as the game advances, you're adding additional workers to your pools, different specialists, different physicians, different doctors that will optimize your actions going forward. I personally worked in the healthcare industry for 5 years, so again, I have an affinity to it, but also my wife, she still works in healthcare till this day, and it's just a great game, a fun game. It plays pretty well solo, but it also plays fun competitively, even though it's kind of like multiplayer solo because your actions don't necessarily impact somebody else's actions. The only phase of the game where you can impact someone else is the drafting phase, where you will acquire additional units or acquire additional workers. And if you go first in the turn order, you will be able to take your preference and leave limited options for your opponents. But it's a fun game. I like the theme. I still haven't played with the community expansion, which adds a few other different modules for the game, including a maternity ward, I believe it is. Still haven't played it. I do own the expansion. Can't wait to open it up. But for now, Dice Hospital is my number 98 board game of all time. My number 97 board game of all time is Notre Dame, a classic game by Stefan Feld. This is another pick and pass card drafting game. I already had Sushi Go. I probably will have some more in the future. No spoilers here. Notre Dame is one of the older Stefan Feld games. It was designed back in the year 2007. It's one of the meaner Stefan Feld games, but I really enjoy what the different characters you acquire throughout the course of the game, the different abilities that they're able to give you. I also enjoy, it's almost like a worker placement type mechanism, very similar to Architects of the West Kingdom, where you place little cubes and they kind of represent your workers, and you place one cube in a particular sector of the city. The board represents the area of Notre Dame, and you place the cubes on a sector, and that sector triggers a particular action, and it'll trigger it one time for you. However, once you place your second cube in that same sector, it'll trigger it a second time or twice as much. And cumulatively, as you continue to put more cubes into the different sectors, depending on which actions you want to take, you will multiply how much you will benefit from that action. I find that to be really cool. You have to be very crafty, though, because you have to find ways to either retrieve your cubes or to add additional cubes to your pool, because as the game progresses, your pool of cubes is going to dwindle down, and you're going to have limited actions and limited options if you do so. So that's something to keep in mind. My number 97 board game of all time, Notre Dame. My number 96 board game of all time is Carcassonne. Carcassonne is the classic tile laying game from the year 2000. This game has been around a long time. I actually played this game before I was a full-fledged gamer and remember enjoying it. This game ranked a lot higher on my list in previous years. That's because I was factoring in all the expansions. I was factoring in all the different spin-offs, in particular Carcassonne the Castle, which I no longer have in my collection, but the game itself, you know, it's showing its age. It's been around for a long time. I do enjoy playing it with my children. I've played this game multiple times with both of my children, and I feel like it's been easy enough for even my 6-year-old daughter to play. When she was 5 years old, she couldn't quite understand the strategy, but at least it was easy enough for her to join us in the experience. My number 96 board game of all time, Carcassonne. Now my number 95 board game of all time is Jamaica. This is a pirate-themed game where basically each player controls a pirate ship, and they are racing around the island of Jamaica, trying to be the first ship to make it all the way back to Port Royal. And it's such a fun, immersive, thematic experience because you really do feel like a pirate as you're out there searching for treasure, as you're combating your opponent pirate ships and trying to plunder their loot. It's such a fun game, really cool mechanism as to how you play cards and trigger your different actions. And you got to budget it correctly because each turn at the beginning or each round at the beginning of the round, you're going to roll a set of dice, and it's going to be 2 dice. And each number will determine respectively the number of actions you could do in the day phase and the number of actions you could do in your night phase. And each card you play has one side that corresponds to the day and one side that corresponds to the night. So based on that die roll, it will determine which card you want to play. I have this really cool action I want to do, but if I do it right now, the day phase action is low, so I won't be able to get the most out of it. So maybe I might want to save this for a future round when that die roll is higher and I'll be able to capitalize more. Really fun game. The artwork, the components, all beautiful. My number 95 board game of all time, Jamaica. And now we move on to my number 94. My number 94 board game of all time, another classic, El Grande by Wolfgang Kramer. This game is just a fun game. I have the big box expansion, which includes multiple expansions. I've played 2 of the expansions so far. I think there's 3 additional expansions left for me to play. It's a fun area control game. The reason why it's gone so down on my list, because this game was hovering in the top 20, 25 for many, many years. The reason why it's gone down so much on the list is because nobody I've played with it enjoys it nearly as much as me. And that is a factor. And that's something that I factored in as I've gotten rid of all these board games over the last couple years, is how much do I enjoy it? Yes. But how much do the people I play with enjoy it? Especially if we're talking about multiplayer games. If this is a game I could play solo and I adore it, then whatever. But if I need 2, 3, 4, 5 people to play this game and nobody else really likes playing it, then for as much as I enjoy it, it's got to go. So El Grande hasn't gone yet, but it has gone down on my rankings. Fun game, the grandfather of the area control, area majority style game, which has been repeated and duplicated so many times over the decades. My number 94, El Grande. Now we will move on to my number 93, which is Wits and Wagers, the classic party style game. Well, it's almost not like a party style game. I guess it's too analytical, perhaps, to be a party style game, but it can create for some fun moments when you see people's answers. This is basically a trivia game where everybody gives answers, but all of the answers are numerical, which makes it easier. So you don't necessarily have to know information. You just have to use some common sense, some logic, make an estimation, make a guess, an educated guess. And then after everybody places down their guesses, the individual players will wager. They will place bets on which answer they think is the correct one. And they don't have to bet on their own. And everybody gets 2 betting chips, so they can make 2 separate bets too. They could hedge their bets. If they're not so confident in somebody, they could put one bet on one and another bet on the other. And not only are you trying to look for the answer that you think is most likely, but as the game progresses and you're falling behind in score, perhaps, you might actually want to look at the odds, because each of the answers are ranked in ascending order from lowest to highest. And depending on where they fall, they'll have a different odds to them as to how much you'll win if you win that bet. So it could be 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1. I think it goes as high as to 6 to 1 odds. So it's very unlikely, perhaps, that guess will win. But if you're falling behind and you see that everybody else has a lot more money than you do, you might want to make that bet and see if you could try to catch up. My number 93 game of all time, Wits and Wagers. My number 92 board game of all time is another new game to the list. It's my second new game in this set of 10 here, and it's Last Bastion. And Last Bastion, it was a spin-off, not a spin-off, it was a reskinning of Ghost Stories. And I never got to play the original Ghost Stories, but Ghost Stories, I had heard so much about it. It's a cooperative game, and it was notorious for being such a difficult and mean game where even at its easier difficulty levels, the average group would have a really hard time defeating it. And one of the critiques I've heard with the Last Bastion spin-off or reprint is the fact that they find that it's lost a little bit of that difficulty. It's still a hard game, but the players who have played the original find it to be a lot easier. Well, I'm okay with that. I never played the original. I played Last Bastion a good amount of times. It's a really hard game, as it is, and I am fine. I think I've only won once out of dozens of times that I've played it, but I've had a fun time every single experience. The reprinting here has a Dungeons and Dragons fantasy theme to it, as opposed to the Asian fantasy theme that was contained in Ghost Stories. I enjoy it. I enjoy the components. I enjoy the experience. I enjoy the decision making. I enjoy the fact that I could play it solo, controlling multiple characters. It's just been a good game, a fun game. Again, I don't win a lot, and I'm okay with not winning a lot at solo or cooperative games. I really am. But yes, the winning percentage is very, very low for this one. But we'll see what happens as I continue to play and maybe figure out the nuances of the gameplay. My number 92 board game of all time, Last Bastion. And now for the final game for this set of 10, my number 91 board game of all time is Wingspan. And Wingspan is such a polarizing game. I find that every time I mention it, there are so many people that are disappointed that I don't like it more. And then there are so many people that are disappointed that I like it at all. Guys, I like it as much as I like it. This is how I feel. This is my top 100 list of all time. Wingspan is a good game. The components and the production is amazing. Stonemaier Games is always known for their quality, their development of the game. So you know that they did not slouch in any of these departments. I still have not played any of the expansions. I do own the European expansion. I know other expansions have come out as Oceania and a few others. I haven't played any of the others. I haven't played any of the spin-offs, the different games with Span at the end of it. But I have enjoyed my games of Wingspan. I find the game to be such a serene experience, such a Zen-like experience. Also, I find it to be educational. As I'm playing the game, I'm actually reading the information on the cards, the flavor text, to know more about these different birds and where they are naturally located and what their diet consists of and how long is their wingspan. I find that to be all real interesting information, and it makes for a soothing experience as I play the game. But also mechanically, the game is very sound, very streamlined. I find that it's so easy to learn the game and never forget how the game goes. The board is so intuitive as to how it's been constructed and designed. Also, I find that the solo mode with the Automa player is so fun, so challenging. You can modify the difficulties by removing one card or another, but it's just such an enjoyable experience every time I play the game. It has gone down on the list, but it's still pretty good. It's still good enough to be in the top 100. My number 91 game of all time, Wingspan. And that's it for today's list for the top 100 board games of all time, number 100 to 91. Thank you so much for joining us here when Harry Met Board Games. Please stay tuned for the next set of videos, the next set of games that will come out later on this week, where I'll be talking about games number 90 through 81. Please comment down below as to what are some of your favorite games from among this top 10. Which games are you surprised to see here? Which games you wish would not be included in the top 100 at all? I'm interested in seeing what you have to say. All right, everybody, take care, stay safe, stay healthy, and have fun gaming. Bye-bye.